Welcome to the Dreyer Drive podcast, a podcast all about siblings and the people, places, and pop culture that raised us. And today we're talking about a place. It didn't really raise us, but it might have raised us. We're talking about Canada's Wonderland. We'll have a little mention of Ontario Place, and we'll definitely talk about parking lot carnivals. And this episode is for all of you who ever spent any time at a county fair, at a Pioneer Day, at a Walmart parking lot carnival, and have stories to tell. Jacqueline and I will also ask each other a hyper-specific question about a personality assessment that we took dozens of times as teenagers. And we'll also hear a story from Jacqueline about a roller coaster headrest and how it saved her life, and it's not going to go the way you think it will. Finally, as always, we will have an Unhinged text message from a family member, and this week we'll also have some pictures to go with it, so make sure you check out DryerDrive.com and look for episode number 8. And with that being said, let's jump on to this roller coaster of an episode. Anything wild and new? I know we kind of start with that. Anything wild and new on your side, aside from the fact that mom and dad are visiting?
Where we are going to our local amusement park.
That's nice. Last week we said that it would be a good idea to buy them a mug, a reusable, repurposable mug. Did you go out and do that so that they don't have to spread 233,000 empty water, half drunken water bottles around the house?
No, and I regret it because as we were leaving to go to the mall, Dad goes and gathers 4 water bottles and he's got them in his arm. And I'm like, what are you doing? And he's like, oh, I just thought I should bring some water. I'm like, we're not running a marathon, 4 water bottles. We're going to the mall. There's water there. He was like, oh, do you think just 2? I think just 0. Like, you don't need a whole water bottle to go anywhere. I talked him down. He took 2.
I imagine at some point during the conversation, your eyes drifted to his chest pocket where he had 4 folded paper towels, right? Sticking out like a pocket square.
I can't even be mad because on the way home, my son was eating an ice cream cone and his fingers got sticky. And he was like, Mom, do you have a napkin? My fingers are sticky. Dad, sitting next to me, front seat, riding passenger seat, right out of the pocket. He had
wets it from a water bottle.
Ryan, it's not a joke.
No.
It is my real. It is 100% accurate.
The other thing he always has is he always has a toothpick in his pocket. He has more than a toothpick. It's usually 2 at least, because there are times where, like, I'm at a restaurant, he'll see me working around and trying to and he'll just reach into his pocket and pull out a toothpick. He's like, do you want one of these? And I'm like, did you get that from the table? Like a holder of clean toothpicks? No. It is in my pocket. I'm like, I will pass. This is a hard pass.
One time when we were first married and we were living in an apartment while we were waiting for a house to be built, my best friend from Canada would come visit quite a bit. And she was down visiting, and Dad and Mom had just been visiting and they had stayed at the apartment and they went home. And then my best friend came to visit and she met someone at the airport, a guy, and she brought him to the apartment. Utah is a very strange place. She got his phone number and they had dated for a couple of weeks while she was down here visiting. And she brought him over to the apartment. And so we were getting ready to watch a movie. He's sitting on the couch and he looks down and I see him reach down and pick something up and he holds it up and he's looking at it. He was like, is this an earplug? And it was Dad's Dad wears earplugs a lot. It was like one of those styrofoam.
A lot. It's just something he does. Pop them in, walk around the house.
Can't hear anything. Wears earplugs. This was back when he could hear things, but it was one of those squishy earplugs. And because of the way that our brains work as porters, instead of being like, yes, I'm so embarrassed. This is disgusting. Please don't touch that. It's from my father's ear. I said, who just picked something up off of somebody else's floor and
joke.
Shamed him for it.
No joke. That's where I was going to go with that. I'm like, why would you say that it's disgusting that he picked it up? Like, who does that? Not even entertaining that there should be an apology.
No, I did not apologize. I shamed him for it, made him feel so stupid, and they did not date after that.
I would have done the exact same thing. This podcast has now been announced. Like, people know about it.
The masses
all think maybe it's got like 60 something listens, and I think they're, you know what, let me give you the real number.
Let's run down the real numbers right now, because I want people to know, like, boots on the ground, you were here first.
You were here first. Well, not first, actually. It was me and then you and then mom and dad in that order. And then I assume that actually our other family members haven't listened to it. It says that there have been 365 views to our Substack. And episode number 1 has 70 views. And episode number 2 has 44. Actual listens, there's been 85 podcast downloads of episode number 1. And episode number 2 has had 48 podcast downloads.
Okay,
so we've cracked 100.
We're doing pretty well.
I'm not calling this the next podcast sensation, but what is 1 degree less than sensation?
I don't know. I don't think anybody has ever called anything the podcast sensation. So
you heard it here first.
I'm not calling it that because no one's ever said those words together before.
Every now and then on Reddit, there'll be like a post where someone's like, I scrolled through YouTube and looked for videos with 0 views or 0 subscribers. And I found this like the sweetest gentleman, and look at him. He's just making leather wallets. And I think we should give him a boost. And like the next day, he'll have like 280,000 followers. And he's on there and his reaction is so genuine. He's like, I had no idea that people were watching. And I just really want to say thank you to everyone out there. He's just the most genuine person. There's no one's doing that for us. They're going to see this and be like, I do not want these people to have anybody listening to them. There's no one going to be out there like, let's just get some people to view them and listen to them. So there's this term in marketing or go-to-market or venture capital. It's called the total addressable market. Mm-hmm. And in venture capital, you want to invest in companies that have a very large total addressable market, because obviously you're not going to capture the entire market. You're going to capture a portion of that. So the larger the market, the larger the chance that you actually have to make some money. So what I'm trying to say is no investor ever would invest in this podcast. Like, I'm sorry, who is your target market? You're like, they had to live between Strathy and Burles between 1987 and 1999. They had to have attended the English part of Southwood Park Public School. We're not even talking French immersion. I'm assuming they can't even understand this.
Get out of here, French immersion. You think you're so cool. Do you have a question for this week? Because I have what I think is a pretty good one. And
let's go with it.
Talking about niche things, this is like nicher than niche.
I like it. I like the visualization of subscribers dropping off. The further, like literally minute by minute, episode by episode, instead of gaining. By this one, there will be 4 people listening.
It's like, and you thought you could relate to us? Think again. You'll never relate to us ever.
What are you doing listening to this podcast?
I also imagine people listening to it, like maybe they think it's funny, but like the person that's around them is like, what is this? This is definitely an AirPod podcast. Like no one can know you're listening to this.
I like watching like the tips for people starting a new podcast. And I've seen people like, make sure that you like build in the possibility of virality. We're doing the exact opposite. Like when people are sitting around being like, you know what? I listened to this really cool podcast. It's like stuff you should know about. And like, did you know that recycling, blah, 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 blah. No one's going to be sitting down and being like, listen, I think I've got it. Dreyer Drive, let me tell you.
Have you ever heard of a buffet table?
Have you ever heard the word shellac? And do you know that it's pronounced niche and not niche?
Okay, so my very niche question of the day. I'm going to ask the question and then I'll have to explain some of it.
I like these kinds of questions.
When you were a kid and took mom's test, what color were you? And and what color are you now? Now, the explanation of this is that our mom, when we were growing up, was a career counselor, and she had a lot of personality tests that she would give, and she would use us quite a bit as guinea pigs when she was getting used to taking the tests or checking results and that kind of thing. And she had one specific test, which was it the what color is your parachute test, or was it not the parachute one?
Primary colors.
Okay.
So
we would use this as language around the house, like, oh, he's just acting really green, or you're being so blue right now. Like that would come up a lot. And my color has changed drastically from when I was a kid. So I want to know what color you were then and what color you think you are now.
So I'm on the website right now. There's red, orange, yellow, green, blue, and purple.
So red and purple did not exist when we were kids.
Let me explain this. I've got the color wheel open right now. So extreme red is takes charge, determined, can have intimidating temper. Extreme orange is fun, likes variety, wildly entertaining. Extreme yellow is understanding, kind, caring, gives in to people. Extreme green is works well with others, fair, deeply committed. Extreme blue is likes details, asks questions, perfectionist. Extreme purple is frank, organized, gets things done, does things by the book.
Okay, so they have changed from when we were kids.
Yes. So red and purple are definitely new. When we were kids, it was orange, yellow, green, or blue.
Mm-hmm. So what would you say you were as a kid then?
As a kid, I was orange. Outside of school, in school, I was actually like a little bit quiet, maybe, or just like a little bit awkward. But like when I was around people that I was comfortable with, like I wanted to be wildly entertaining. I wanted to be like over the top, telling the stories, making people laugh, teasing people, like those kinds of things. I did a lot of acting without thinking, and I definitely valued humor. And those are like literally pulled straight out from Orange. I think there's still a lot of that with the way that I think, but I think that like just because that's like really personality, I think I've become almost the opposite of that to an extent as an adult, where I'm like, I really want the details laid out. I'm a perfectionist for a lot of things. I ask a lot of questions. So I definitely flip from one side of the color wheel to the other. And when I was younger, I wanted to be orange so bad as well.
I was going to say, I don't even think I probably tested kind of orange when we did it, but then I would just tell everybody I was orange because orange was the cool. Like you weren't cool unless you were orange. And I wasn't as much as like crazy or anything like that, but I'd be like, I'm so random. Like, look at this yellow bucket hat I'm wearing. Isn't this like the most random thing you've ever seen? Look at these pants that are vinyl and I'm just so random wearing them. Like I liked that kind of orangeness, like a free-spirited orangeness. I thought that was like the way to live. And now I am not like that. I'm like you, where I'm hyper objective to the point that like I really never like put emotion into any decision whatsoever, to the point of like honestly offending other people, where I'm like, sorry, it's just not like that. Like objectively, it's not like that. And so I think, and I would never be random now. And it's like one of those things that you look back in your life and you're like, good, cringe, full body cringe. Why were you being like that? Why? Taking a test like this when you're a teenager, like it's like, you're a science nerd or the life of the party. Which one are you? It's like, okay, I'm 16 years old. What do you think I'm going to pick? I'm going to pick life of the party every time. Like the other ones were so undesirable. Like you cry a lot. You love science. Like
do you like reading encyclopedias for fun? Do you enjoy other people being attracted to you and thinking that you're a fun person? Yeah.
Oh, and then you can go around and tell everybody like, I'm an orange.
I'm orange.
Can I say I'm pretty? People are pretty attracted to me. It's bizarre. That, yes. First of all, that we were very much like that was the culture of our family. Today, for our topic, this is going to be a place. So I did some research on the actual place, but this is actually a place that truly raised us. And in the spirit of us going to the amusement park tomorrow, I wanted to talk about Canada's Wonderland.
Oh, okay.
And so Canada's Wonderland is the amusement park near where we grew up. It was the place to be as a teenager. It's in a town called Vaughan, Ontario, which literally the only thing in Vaughan is like high-rise apartments and Canada's Wonderland. And Canada's Wonderland is actually a massive amusement park and actually one of the most visited places in all of Canada. I'll go a little bit into the history of Canada's Wonderland. It was opened in 1981, so it predates both of us, but we did spend a lot of our childhood going there. My favorite thing about Canada's Wonderland is that it was originally owned by Paramount Pictures. And so when it was opened and when we were going, all of the roller coasters and attractions were named after movies. In 2006, it was bought out by the same people who own like Cedar Point and other amusement parks in the States. And so they lost all the licensing to the Paramount movies. So they had to rename all of the roller coasters. And some of the roller coasters are so specific to the movie and they just left them and renamed them. Like there was a roller coaster that was the Italian Job roller coaster.
Yeah.
And if you remember, the Italian Job is an entire heist done by Mini Coopers. So the entire ride is you're on a Mini Cooper.
I remember it.
They were stripped of their licensing and they had to rename it the Backlot Stunt Coaster. And it still has.
There's no way that's the real name. Sorry. Can you please repeat that?
Backlot Stunt Coaster. I 100% promise, because it makes me laugh every time I go there. I'm like, I can't believe this is the best name they came up with. Still Mini Coopers. You still ride through all the sets. It was almost like a Universal Studios where the rides were, and the lines that you lined up in were like set pieces. And so you're still lining up in the set pieces. You drive through the set pieces in a Mini Cooper, and it's just the backlot stunt coaster. You're like supposed to ignore the fact that it's obviously the Italian Job.
I just found it in Wikipedia. That's hilarious. They had another one called Top Gun. Right?
Top Gun. And now I believe it is just called, hang on. Oh, it was changed to Flight Deck.
Really?
The thing about Top Gun is that you were loaded into, did you ever ride it?
No.
Here's the orange of it all, is that I was terrified of roller coasters, and you and your friends would go to Canada's Wonderland, and sometimes mom would make you take me and my friends. And one of these times I went and I was terrified to go, but all of you and your friends were going and I didn't want to feel embarrassed. So I forced myself to go on Vortex, which to this day is my favorite roller coaster in the world. I went on it. I kept my eyes closed the entire time. But I realized I wasn't scared of roller coasters after that if I just kept my eyes closed. And so that was the first time I'd ever gone on like a real roller coaster. It was with you and your friends.
I hate roller coasters. And when we would go, I would spend the entire time making up excuses and like trying to find ways to like ride the ones I knew I was comfortable with. The list was very short. It was like Vortex and I think it was called the Wildebeest. Those were the only two rides that I felt comfortable on. There's no loops. There's no massive drops. Vortex was really like its main feature was that it was fast. And then eventually they came up with those same styles, but with bigger drops and loops. And I never messed with that. Like, do you remember there was one called the Bat? And the Bat was just two loops that you would go do it forward and do it backwards. And it would be like, we're going on the Bat. And I'm like, oh, okay, cool. I'll meet you there in a second. I'm just going to go over here and check on the rah, and like just make some excuse to not get in line. And then make sure that I come back and the line's super long. And I'm like, wow, guys, I can't butt in line. Like, you guys go ahead. I'll get you on the next one. And then like it's just like the shell game. Like, where's Ryan during everyone's lining up for the rides? And like, literally, if it wasn't Wildebeest or like, you know, like the Italian Job was when you're sitting in a mini, you're just going around. It's not too crazy. Or like a water one. But the crazy roller coasters, like I've legitimately never been on any of them. Like you talk about like the Top Gun, I've never been on it. The Behemoth, I've never been on it. Like the Bat, never been on it. Any of the big like marquee
on the Bat?
Drop Zone? Are you kidding me? Never been on Drop Zone? Like there is no way. I will give you all of the excuses. Last time we went, I fell right back into it. Remember, with your family, your kids.
Yeah, you took.
I'm like, I'll take the kids. Yeah, I'll take them to the kids area. I'll do this. You know what, you guys go off. You guys have some time to yourselves.
Uncle of the Year over here is just going to take these kids and go play the rubber ducky game in the kids area, which was once owned. It was Hanna-Barbera land when we were kids, which Hanna-Barbera was like the Flintstones. Like that.
Yeah.
So those characters. So it was really strange. But anyway, back to Top Gun. When you loaded straight up in a cage. And as the ride started, it rotated so that you were on your stomach like Superman, right? So imagine you're in a cage and so the headrest was under your chin. And one time I was there with our cousin Kelly. Kelly's 10 years older than me, and we would go to the Wonderland a lot together. It was probably one of the first times we'd ever been on Top Gun because it was like the newest ride. And they locked us in the cage, but they didn't secure the strap underneath me that's supposed to keep you from falling out of it, like sliding out. And as we were on the roller coaster, I could feel myself sliding farther down the chin rest. And so when it got to this point, I just like Hail Married and bit down on the headrest because I was like, the amount of germs and bacteria that was probably on this. Only teenagers go to Wonderland. So like just sweaty teens had been on there before, but like I just didn't know what else to do. So I'm sliding down and I just like, and I bit down onto the cushion and rode with my teeth in the headrest the entire time.
That is wild. So Top Gun, now known as Flight Deck, was Canada's first inverted roller coaster and the 9th roller coaster added to the park in 1995.
Top Gun was one of those, so you hang, your legs are dangling on that ride.
So suspended, I believe is the word. Suspended roller coaster.
And it's inverted because you ride the outside of the loop instead of the inside. So when you go over the loop, your legs like go flinging up into the air over it. It's a great ride, honestly. I've gone on every ride in Canada's Wonderland. I went home over Thanksgiving last year, and that was like one of my first priorities. Great, I want to see family, I want to eat turkey, but like I gotta get to Wonderland because there were a couple new rides that I hadn't ridden yet, and I needed to ride them all.
No, the amount of acting that I had to do, like, I remember watching Top Gun and being like, "Oh, bro, that looks so sick!" Like finger clapping and being like, "Yo, let's go do this. It's gonna be sick. I can't wait. Let's go get in line. Hold on. I got to go to the bathroom. I'll be back in 2 seconds. And then like just be gone for 20 minutes. Come back and be like, yo, you guys are way up there. I can't butt in line. I'll get it the next time around.
I want to know how you were able to keep this con up for so long. I totally thought that you guys were all just like the coolest dudes riding all the rides. And I was like the loser sister tagging along. And I was like, I got to be cool. I got to show them that I can ride the rides.
Like the drive to Canada's Wonderland, Canada's Wonderland.
My people.
The ride up to Canada's Wonderland. And I'd be like, oh man, this is going to be so good. I can't wait. Right. Or I had another one, like once I was like later in teen years, I pretended that like my main focus of Canada's Wonderland was trying to pick up girls, which I was also probably terrified at that point to actually go and talk. Like I talked all the game. So I'd be like, nah, you guys go on Top Gun. I think I just saw some girls that I want to go talk to over here. And then I would just go and like hide out by a vending machine or like eat a beaver tail or something. You know what I mean? Like there's no way that I was doing the roller coaster or talking to girls.
Well, that's the other part of Wonderland is like you went specifically because it was just full of teenagers. You're like, maybe I'll meet someone when I'm there. I'll fall deeply in love with someone in the Vortex line and we'll ride together for the rest of the day. Like, did it ever happen? Absolutely not. Like I was talking to Annie. This is so embarrassing.
Walking through, like, hey, you guys know Mr. Orange is here, right? Mr. Orange right here. We got Mr. Orange right here. You want to talk to Mr. Orange?
Attention. People are very attracted to me, so they say. Did you ever read the Canadian Mindbuster?
Yes. So that one was, I remember it being extremely sketchy because I think it was one of the oldest roller coasters, if not the original roller coaster. It was wooden and it was like clickety clackety you can hear things like creaking, and so I definitely rode that one, and it's a very low stakes in the sense of there's no loops or really big drops, but it's made of wood and it can break at any moment.
And they did have the Ghoster coaster, which was like the little kid wooden roller coaster that wasn't like super scary, but like it was like your entry roller coaster to get used to them, like the Ghoster coaster or the
your gateway. I think it's called a gateway roller coaster.
That's what I was looking for. It was my gateway roller coaster. But this last time I went up, so I have Canada's Wonderland, as far as I know, has one of the roller coasters with the biggest free falls in the entire world because it goes underground. So it's so high, and it goes as high as it possibly can according to like regulation. But then they also dug it out underneath, and that ride is the Yukon Striker, right?
Yukon Striker, not the Leviathan?
Leviathan doesn't.
Yukon Striker, there you're right there. A dive coaster that opened as the tallest, fastest, and the longest of its kind in the world, breaking the records previously held by Valraven at Sister Park Cedar Point.
So I went on it this last time. It's fairly new. So the first time I got to go on it was this last time that I was there for Thanksgiving. And I was with Daniel's partner, Renee, and my daughter. And we were like so hyped up to go. And my daughter filmed us before getting on. And she was like, this is us before getting on the Yukon Striker. We went on it and she filmed us afterwards. Our hair, all of our hair is like this far off of our heads. And she's like, this is us after we rode the Yukon Striker. We're like, we've all been changed. Like, it was one of the wildest experiences of my life.
Really?
Mm-hmm. It's crazy.
Were you, I don't want to say scared, like, were you surprised? Because you get on all these other rides. I remember last time I went with you and Seiko went and did Leviathan. I think you did Leviathan maybe a few times, right?
Okay. The funniest thing about Leviathan is that you're in a long line with like, I think 5 other seats. And Seiko and I had got on it. And like the sense of community that develops in the short time as you get like locked in and start riding up to the top. Like for some reason, every time I've ridden Leviathan, I've walked off with like 3 brand new friends because whoever you're sitting with, you're like, we're going to get through this together. And Seiko and I were on and it totally happened. There was this person who had never been on it before. And Seiko likes roller coasters. But she was kind of like, we were both nervous because it was our first time getting on it. And we were like, it's okay, we'll get through this together. And like literally like reaching over to hold a stranger's hand on Leviathan. The best friends in my life I've made while in the 30 seconds of riding Leviathan. I don't know why it is like that. No, the Yukon Striker, it kind of dangles you there for a long time. So you really have a lot of time to like question your entire life choices. Like, why am I doing this? What am I searching for in my life that I'm still like, seeking out these rides? So you have enough time to be like, I don't want to do this anymore before you get plunged into the whole thing. Plus, I just love the Canadianness of a ride called the Yukon Striker. Like, are you joking? Like, it's just like how I can be prouder to be a Canadian than when riding the Yukon Striker.
You get off the Yukon Striker and head right to the mighty Canadian Mindbuster. That's like, mine, M-I-N-E, and not mind for those of you who...
Mine, yeah, is busting a mine. When you first walk into Wonderland, there's a giant mountain, and it's actually called Wonder Mountain for those who were dying to know. But originally it was designed around an Eiffel Tower. That was what it was supposed to be. At the last minute, they pulled the Eiffel Tower and decided to do this mountain theme again. And as like you kind of move counterclockwise around the park, I would say. Each land has like, it's like a medieval land, and like everything, there's like giant turkey legs and whatever. And then you move into like the mining land, and it's like all the right. So it's just, that's the way that it's set up, and just nothing brings me greater joy.
I was under the impression that Wonder Mountain itself was a play on the Paramount logo. I haven't seen it anywhere in the Wikipedia article, but I always was under the impression that it was the Paramount logo, which is like kind of crazy when they changed the name and then they're like, welcome to this thing that has nothing to do with Paramount. Right, we already talked about like the Italian joke. The backdrop is the logo.
And did you at least go on the rides? Like there was a Days of Thunder ride where
yes, definitely
it was the movie theater, the way the chairs moved and you were in a race car.
Yeah.
I believe they got rid of that completely.
Makes sense. So many of them were just such a stretch. Like, why make a ride based on that movie of all the movies? Like The Italian Job. This is going to be a hard-hitting, fast-paced roller coaster. Like, it's a movie about a heist in these Mini Coopers.
Yeah, and like amusement parks, it's like when you go to Universal in California. I don't think you've ever been, but there's a Water World show, and it's one of the biggest draws of the day. Like everybody goes to the Water World show. And it's like, why? Like Water World of all movies that we're trying to remember. And it's like pyrotechnics of plane crashes on it. All these like specialized divers. They put so much money into the Water World show. And it's like, but has anybody stopped to think and like, this is Waterworld, like one of the worst movies ever made?
Well, yes, it was a bust. I actually really liked the movie Waterworld. I think the premise of the movie is fantastic. I think it's great.
Speaking of movies that specifically you like, I told you that I've been listening to a long form podcast about the Plantagenets from the 1200s to when we talked about them, which mid 1400s. So which
capped off their history. Our first podcast about them just rounded it out. Now we can stop talking about them.
So 250 years I've been listening about this, and like each season is like 12 episodes, hour-long episodes. So I've been spending a lot of time with the Plantagenets, but I just finished the last season, and guess who showed up in the last season? None other than our friend William Wallace.
It has to be.
He was one of the people that challenged a Plantagenet king.
And I'm sure he came out victorious. And he's actually
layers.
And we did talk about Braveheart in a previous episode too, about our Windows 95 theme and my obsession with Braveheart.
Niche podcast? Nay. Hi, you've tuned into Plantagenet, Braveheart, William Wallace, Canada's Wonderland.
Canada's Wonderland.
World.
Yeah, to just put the cherry on the top, we got a place called Canada's Wonderland. What's cool about Canada's Wonderland, though, is I think that it's not necessarily an experience that's limited to people growing up around the Toronto area, because I feel like, well, there's movies about this, right? Where it's like summer holidays and it's going to be a group of kids going to the theme park for like their summer holiday. Or there's movies where people are working at these theme parks or water parks for their summer holidays, because there has to be those places for a bunch of young kids to go and assemble and like figure things out, get in fights, find their first crush, lose their wallet, puke, like all of those things. Like, I don't know why I threw puke in there. Like,
not that I ever.
All the crazy childhood stuff. Puke for you and puke for them.
I know. I love amusement parks. Like, we're big Disney people, but, whatever. There's something about like a local amusement park that I'm obsessed with, because it's just so like the stakes are low and it's such a Muppets version of these other parks that I like, there's just something that like warms my heart about it. I'm like, look at these people just like trying to make it work in Canada's Wonderland. And we would go for school trips. So you'd go with like your entire class. Having a season's pass to Canada's Wonderland was the flex of all flexes.
Oh, yeah. I remember there used to be, I believe you had to phone in and you could do something over the phone for a season's pass before. And then you would actually go. There was another time where you would go and you would actually stand in line to get the season's pass. And again, the stories that I had to tell to not go. And because like I had friends that would get seasons passes. They'd be like, all right, we're going to go to seasons passes. You good? I'm like, what day was that again? They're like, Wednesday at 4 p.m. I'm like, yeah, I'm going to go. I'll definitely be there. And then like Wednesday, 3:58. I'm like, guys, I got to do this other thing. I've got an assignment tomorrow. I got to go to work, or I just make up some random thing because I knew it'd be an absolute waste of money. And I could not keep up that game for an entire summer, multiple times, for an entire season's worth of Canada's Wonderland. It'd be like, I got one trip in me that I could script out all of my little excuses and I'd be good for one shot. But a season, there's no.
What would it take for you to get on, like, okay, so not even Leviathan, like say a bat or a behemoth, like how much would it, or a Top Gun, how much would it take for you? Like, would you be
a horse tranquilizer?
Like there's just like a no-go.
It's off the table. It's not even a consideration. Like there's no way that you would get me on a roller coaster. Like I as someone who now likes a little bit of control and likes rational decisions and rational behavior, like a roller coaster is like the antithesis of everything I believe in. Like I'm just going to get on this thing, trust in other human beings, not just the ones that built it, but the ones that maintain it, the kid that's running it. And now all of these psychotic people around me, is somebody going to puke? Is somebody going to cry? Am I going to end up like all of these variables?
I feel like I almost think the opposite. I'm like, okay, so like someone did the calculations on this. So
right.
And they're smarter than me. So I should be good because I'm not doing calculations on velocity or anything like that. The craziest thing about roller coasters is that they mostly are just physics. Like they don't really have motors. They have chain motors to let them go. But the rest of it is just like it's stuck to the track because of, I was going to say oxygen. Wrong.
Because of oxygen. Because the way that it's just breathing it in.
They're stuck to the track because of gravity. The force of gravity sticks them to the track. There's no other, it's not like being held to the track in any other way. And I'm like, I think that's interesting. I'm like, I want to experience that.
This just happened, I'd say a few weeks ago. It was all over TikTok, but the ride that got stuck upside down for like 45 minutes?
More
like it wasn't even
I would like
more than anybody could endure. But yeah, like I just think about that. I remember, so there's these theme parks that seem like a somewhat like a lesser version than Disney, right? Because that's really like, I guess peak is at the top. You've got Disney.
That's tippy top.
And then underneath it, you have like your Six Flags, your Cedar Points, your Canada's Wonderland, which are all the same company now, right? So they've all merged into one. As of this month, are we in August or are we July?
July,
so you're still in July. I'm in August.
Oh yeah.
So I'm living in the future out here in Japan. I don't know if you guys know this, but I live in Japan.
So Ryan lives in Japan.
Let's establish this. So as of July 2024, those are all the same company. But then you have this like step down, which is the parking lot fair. Remember that? Like in the Woco / Walmart parking lot where they would show up on a Monday and have an entire theme park assembled by Wednesday that we would just trust our lives on. Like that's another tilt-a-whirl, like the Zipper and the tilt-a-whirl. I remember going there and they'd shut it down for 20 minutes because one of the cages from the Zipper. So the Zipper was this thing that basically looks like a chainsaw, right? Where it's this elongated. It's like, look, imagine a chainsaw blade, except for all of the teeth on a chainsaw blade are these cages where you can sit in with like up to 3 people, I think. And as the chainsaw goes around, those cages also rotate, right? Like they're like flipping around depending. And I remember being there more than once where they had to shut the ride down because one of them came loose and someone's in there with like their Canadian Tire purchase ratchet, which in itself is ratchet. And they're like, all right, you guys can jump back on. And you're like, that's a easy no.
And did you throw up on the Gravitron or was that another one of our brothers? I do feel like one of them threw up on the Gravitron.
The Gravitron was another one of the rides that I actually could go on. So the Gravitron is this giant UFO shaped thing where it would just spin and gravity would hold you to the wall. And you could do things like, stand up and be parallel with the floor, perpendicular with the wall, because gravity would hold you to the wall. And it was one of those ones that I found I could go on it. And so I would almost make that, I would try so hard to make that the cool ride. Like, you guys can't ride the Gravitron? Gravitron, it's literally just this thing that spins you around. It's like your father or mother hugging you and spinning you in a circle. That's like the degree. That's the
you don't feel anything when you're inside of it. You're just kind of stuck to a wall.
And I remember, so two distinct memories I have from the Gravitron. One, I tried to convince everybody that was so cool that like you had to be a psycho to ride it multiple times in a row. Like, you guys want to see how crazy I am? You want to see how much I like rides? I'm going to go.
See how orange I can be.
We're just weaving it in. You want to see the orangest of orangier oranges? And I think I rode it 12 or 14 times straight. Like, I just didn't get off because I had the wristband. And the wristband was the season's pass equivalent, right? The one night.
Carnival.
All you can ride Carnival. And so I rode it 12 or 14 times straight. And then people are like, Ryan, like, this isn't, it's nothing. You're not cool. We're going to go on other rides. I'm like, Gravitron, baby, woo! You know, like, that's exactly, I'm on there just pretending it's the craziest thing. So that's one memory. I remember riding it 12 or 14 times. I don't know, you'd have to check the Guinness Book of World Records. It's in there somewhere. So Gravitron 12 or 14 times. And I remember there was a girl that I had a crush on. I must have been grade 7, maybe. And there was kind of like a, hey, like, you want to meet at the fair tonight? Let's meet up at the fair. And like, that's how maybe innocent it was when we were in grade 7. It was like just us being in the same, like, cordoned off. Yeah, the same parking lot is like, whoo, what'd you do Friday? Met up with so-and-so. I was like, oh, no, you didn't. No, you didn't. I'm like, I was in the same parking lot, bro. Like, she was there with her friends. I walked past her, we smiled, and we had pre-arranged to be there at the same time. So it's like literally what happened. So I pre-arranged to be there with this girl at the same time, me with my friends, her with her friends, and like bumped into each other. And we happened to ride the Gravitron at the same time. And the Gravitron, if you remember—
love story for the ages.
This is just how I believe, this is how I believe most movie love stories go. But the Gravitron, when it spun around, there were these like pads, almost like massage beds against the wall. That's the only way I could explain. It's like
and
massage bed
rollers, right?
Yeah,
so you can move up and down.
That's it. So as it started spinning and the shape, like the slight tilt of the Gravitron wall, your massage bed on rollers would roll up. You would look like you bring you off the ground. So now not only are you stuck to the wall because of gravity, your feet are off the ground because your mat jail cot has on the rollers come off the ground. But some of them were broken. The rollers hadn't been greased or they just didn't roll or whatever. So some people wouldn't roll to the top just because of the way that it worked. And I remember me and this girl, we were beside each other on the Gravitron, and my Gravitron jail cot, it went up the wall and hers didn't, but she wanted it to go up, and she reached over and she pulled on me to get her roller to go up. And I remember that carrying my love, my crush, for months. I'm like, and then she grabbed me. And I was like, no, she did not. I'm like, bro, she grabbed my arm and she pulled her Gravitron jail cot up.
And all of your friends are like, that's the farthest anybody's gotten with a girl.
Like, tell them the story. Ryan, tell them the story. Tell them the story. I'm like, I went to the fair. Gravitron 14 times in a row, baby. She touched my arm.
Truly, the carnival is the thing that I find most terrible. Like, that's what I would need a horse tranquilizer to get on, is any carnival ride. I will go on any ride in an established amusement park setting. But if it has been on a truck in the last 48 hours, it's the no-fly zone for me. Now, do you also remember? So we've got Disneyland at the peak, like here's our chart here. Disneyland, then the local amusement parks. We've got parking lot carnivals in the bottom, but somewhere in the middle, below that, I mean, just above Carnival and below local amusement park, I'd have to put a little place we like to call Ontario Place. And Ontario Place is like, it's not even in space and time to try to understand what Ontario Place was, because it wasn't an amusement park, really. It was where you went when you didn't have enough money for Wonderland, because Ontario Place was quite a bit cheaper to go to, and it still had like some attractions. things.
They're like bumper boats.
Bumper boats.
An IMAX theater.
Yes. Or I remember they had a Lego attraction where you could go and build Legos, which was really exciting. And then remember they had the maze where you would scan in with your card and time yourself. And the maze was full of mirrors and plexiglass. You'd like slam your face off of every surface before the end.
Yeah.
But you'd scan in, scan out, and try to time yourself to see who had the fastest. And then it also had those giant globes.
Just like a ripoff of Epcot Center.
100%.
Right? It was literally just a ripoff.
I can remember how they smelled inside, but I don't remember what was actually inside. You'd walk up these stairs on the outside and you can go inside of them, but I can't remember. And I have to do, this is my bad. I could have researched. It's just that I only thought of Ontario Place just now. I forgot that it existed.
Well, what's wild is right now it's in the news, Ontario Place, because
What?
Yeah, it's because it's been shut down, right? From my understanding, it's been shut down. And now they're trying to figure out, like, what are they going to be doing there? Like, are they going to be tearing it down? Are they going to be building parking lots? Like, what are they going to be doing? And so right now, like the most recent headline is that there are serious concerns raised over Ontario Place redevelopment during city's public consultations. So Ontario Place is just steeped in controversy at the moment while they're trying to figure out its future.
Spill the Toronto tea. What's going on with Ontario Place?
So it's all over the news right now, and people are trying to figure out what's going to be happening with it. But anyway, so just going back to kind of round this out, I believe while this was extremely niche, talking about Ontario Place and Canada's Wonderland and the Ajax Walmart parking lot fair, I believe that this is something that's shared by all teens everywhere, whether it's your county fair or your Pioneer Day that you guys just did, right? Like when your children are making their podcast in the year 2058, they will be talking about the Pioneer, whatever it's called, the Pioneer Day.
Pioneer Days, which we have here. But I honestly, like, this is one of those topics that, like, if anybody in the Substack comments or anything like that would like to tell us, like, where they ended up going, like, where they grew up going, like, I'm truly fascinated by a local amusement park. I'm like, tell me about your favorite rides, because a lot of them are carbon copies or they use the same roller coaster. So the one that we're going to tomorrow has a dragon fire. I believe it's called, it's not Cannibal. It's something like that.
Cannibal, jump on the ride, kids. Come on. We're riding the Hannibal Lecter.
We do have one called Cannibal. Colossus. So their Colossus in Utah is the dragon fire from Canada's Wonderland. It's the exact same track. And so I'm always like, oh, this is so interesting that we actually were going on the same roller coasters. Like, what a love story. Justin and I were going on the same roller coasters in different countries and we didn't even know it.
Ask him if he's ever had a girl pull on his arm in the Gravitron.
He better not have.
Which somehow sounds more explicit when you... Leave it in. Speaking of rides going off the rails, wow. I'm going to take just that snippet and put that at the front. And then just 2 minutes of us laughing. The tears. Wow. But
what I wouldn't give for a funnel cake right now.
That is something that cannot be touched. The Canada's Wonderland funnel cake, absolutely. So there we go. That is episode number 9. Let's call it number 9. Episode number 9, all about the theme parks that raised us. But absolutely, if you do have your own local theme park, because I think most places kind of do, we want to hear from you. We want to hear about what rides you were on. If you had your own variation of your Walmart parking lot carnival, what was your Gravitron called?
I did have one more fact for you, like, because this is, after all, a fact-based podcast.
Absolutely, we always go for the facts.
First and foremost, I would like you to know that Canada's Wonderland makes $301 million per season.
Oh my gosh.
I couldn't not share that with you because I know as a business person, you would really be interested in that number.
That is literally hundreds of millions of dollars more than I would have guessed. Like, if you told me to guess, I would have been like,
made you guess.
I would have been like $11 million.
No, I think we took it for granted because we grew up near it, but I think Canada's Wonderland is kind of a big deal.
Well, apparently that is insane. That's insane. Every 3 years, they're making $1 billion. So that brings us to almost the end of this podcast, but there's one thing that we usually end with: Unhinged text.
So today when I shared on Instagram that we released this podcast into the wild to watch it flourish, I wanted to specifically use an old picture of us, and I will post it in the show notes. There was a picture of us. We had like a family friend take portraits one year. It's probably 90, I would say 97, 98. And so we had our friend take pictures. She was not like an actual photographer. So a lot of the pictures were our ideas, like, hey, like, what if we did this? First of all, we're all in denim and plaid, all of us.
Not all of us. No, not all of us. Dan showed up in white Adidas tearaways, maybe?
Tearaways. Yep, they're tearaways. I'm looking at them right now.
With black soccer shorts underneath that you could see through the white pants.
Yep, and a backwards hat.
And a black and white Adidas t-shirt, I believe.
You and I are both wearing plaid and denim, but only because I'm wearing your clothes in the picture. I didn't have either. Mom wanted this aesthetic and I didn't have either one. So she just like belted me in a pair of your pants and sent me out the door. And
am I wearing one of the ones that like didn't have the collar? It had like the cowboy collar that I was really into those shirts for a minute.
And again, I will post this in the show notes, but we are all standing next to a tree, a group of 6 trees, and we're all each standing next to one. Dallin is with mom, our youngest brother is standing with mom, and none of us are looking at the camera. We're all looking off into the distance, but we're not looking in different areas. We're all looking in the same area. So it looks like a UFO is going by, and we're all just like watching it together because there's no reason we would all be looking in the same direction into the sky. And I posted it in our sibling thread and just said, in case you wanted a full body cringe today, you said, Dad's the only one who looks somewhat natural. Jonathan, now I know the cause of your shoulder problems. You dislocated it years ago with that pose. Because Jonathan is posing for his life in this picture. Then I said, I would like to know exactly at which byway we bought all of this denim. You said, Dan is holding the tree like he's on the run from the cops, which is quite likely. Jacqueline is holding her tree like she wants it to father her children. And then you answered about the jeans that you got yours from Bargain Harold's. Again, deep cut from the Porter family. Daniel said, classic. Daniel said, wow, that is a classic. Classic terrible photo, which is actually really good for Daniel. Like that's
was it 2 separate messages? Tell me it was 2 separate messages.
That's two separate messages. So I was like, proud of you, Daniel. I said, zoom in on Daniel's face. He looks like a ghost bully from a 90s movie. You said, my favorite thing to do with this photo is to zoom in so that only 2 people at a time are visible. Then side scroll through the picture, 2 people by 2 people. Then I said, I showed it to Aaron, who was my son. I showed it to Aaron and he said, Mom, you are a brother? Because I look like a boy. And that's it.
Oh,
so I will share the picture because it is truly one of our most iconic, which is really saying a lot because our family pictures there
were some good ones. If you can get that, and then also maybe save this for another post, but if you can get the one where we were all lined up, but all of us spreading out to the like one person leaning right, the next person leaning left, and the next person like a Japanese fan.
Also, that is another picture. Mom had that hanging up in her house, and someone did once ask, where is your 5th son? Because again, I look like a boy. My hair is slicked back into a ponytail, and we are wearing the same outfit. You and I, we look like twins. We look like twins.
I'm going to find that photo and just Photoshop the crap out of it. So it's just spread around again and again and again. It's just a spiral of Porters. But if you have that, please add that to the show notes as well and send it to me so I have a copy.
Will do. For some reason, Mom sent me all of our, like I am the family keeper of the hard copy photos for our entire childhood. They're all in my basement. And every so often I
get them all scanned and create like a giant repository of them. That would be
for this
helpful.
Podcast, not for our
just for the podcast. Yeah, just for our actual gain here. I don't get any hard copy photos, but I do get the random photo of a photo that like is just slightly off axis and like, you know, that there's a glare from the light over. Yeah, the glare. I'm like, well, this is great. I'm glad I received this. Or it's just like pixelated and I can't even. Anyway, well, that rounds us out here, and we are at the end of this episode. Again, it is corny to ask this, and I'll probably get this part out, but it helps us when people subscribe and rate this podcast, especially when it's those 5-star ratings that you feel in your heart right now.
And 5-star because, again, I am a fragile person. And if you have nothing nice to say, you keep it to yourself.
You keep it to yourself. All right, you 1-star ratings out there. All right, Reddit. I don't want to hear people I don't know talk about things that I don't care about. But all right, well, we will see you next week for another completely peaceful and quiet and rational episode of the Dreyer Drive podcast.
That's the vibe.